If you have held on to 1,000 Bitcoin for this long and you want to go monetize that, 80,000 Bitcoin for this long, and you want to go monetize that, it's billions of dollars, Yeah, okay. How can you fault that? Go buy your chateau or your yacht or whatever that you're looking for and fund that lifestyle that you want, that you've held out for. Great, whatever. No big deal. But I think that some of these whales that are selling are turning around and saying, they're like, look, I've had 100, 200 or whatever X on my money already. I want to get to, like, right now, yeah, we may get a 10x in Bitcoin. I believe we get a 10x in Bitcoin over the next 7-8 years.
Bitcoin is trading around $111,000, navigating the notoriously volatile September market. Analysts suggest it could climb toward $125,000 by month's end, though dips near $100,000 remain possible. This mixed outlook reflects softer momentum and historical trends, as September has often brought downward pressure. The broader crypto market mirrors this uncertainty, with US spot Bitcoin ETFs seeing notable outflows, while Ethereum ETFs are attracting fresh interest. Investors are also watching upcoming US economic data, particularly jobs reports, as Federal Reserve decisions on rates and liquidity could directly impact Bitcoin's price and overall risk appetite. Meanwhile, some large Bitcoin holders, the so-called whales, have begun selling portions of their stacks. After years of accumulation, many are monetizing billions to diversify or fund lifestyles. Still, most remain long-term bullish, with expectations that Bitcoin could grow 10x over the coming years. These moves aren't seen as a lack of confidence but rather a way to unlock gains while holding on to core positions. In a recent interview, James Lavish explained that whale sales often reflect broader market behavior. While some take profits to enjoy the rewards, others reinvest into new opportunities within Bitcoin's expanding ecosystem. In short, even as whales trim positions, the long-term outlook for Bitcoin remains as strong as ever. We're not here for small gains, we're here for life-changing wealth. Crypto is the frontier of the digital revolution, and most people aren't paying attention yet. If you're aiming for massive gains, why wouldn't you do it tax-free? With ITrust Capital, you can buy, sell, and hold over 80 crypto assets inside a tax-sheltered IRA. That means no taxes or capital gains on trades, ever. It's not just about what you invest in, it's how you invest. With ITrust Capital's self-directed IRAs, you can grow your portfolio in the most tax-advantaged way possible. Sign up today with the link and use code DOSE7 for a $100 funding bonus and start stacking tax-free gains now.
So a big part of what you're seeing is these big moves that are on light volume. And so what we see is somebody who goes and wants to build up a big position. They're gonna have to move the stock or the Bitcoin price or the treasury price, because there's not a lot of volume out there. So this weekend and into today, we're seeing these large enough moves, multi-percent moves in Bitcoin. Sounds like a lot, $3,000, but it's really only 2.5%. Not that big of a deal for Bitcoin. But there's not a lot of volume, Brandon. It's like it's more of a buyer strike than a tsunami of sellers, So that's one thing. I think that Powell wants to solidify his legacy that he got the job done. He did not let inflation rage out of control, although it did rage, and it got nearly got out of control. And it was because of what the Fed did. Let's make that clear. They caused this problem. But he did put the fire out, and he wants to cement his legacy there. Now, the question is, what words does he use to do that? And I believe that he's going to come out and he's going to say that we're getting comfortable with the trajectory of inflation. We're more concerned about jobs, which means that it opens a door for a 25 basis point cut in September, which is a really big deal for stocks and risk assets and things like Bitcoin and gold, because it's an expansion of liquidity. Basically, you make the cost of capital lower, which is good for those kinds of assets and securities. And so, but I do believe he leaves the door open. And what you're seeing right now is some uncertainty around how he's going to come out this week. What kind of numbers are still coming? Because we still have another CPI, another PPI, another PCE. We got more unemployment numbers between now and the next September meeting, and he could change his mind like that. And so there's probably some uncertainty going on, and Bitcoin's definitely sniffing that out and getting a little nervous here. Again, on very light volume. I think that the data is giving Powell enough air cover, especially on the employment side, that he could ease but 25 basis points. And it's not that he's giving in to Trump. If he was giving it to Trump, he'd ease 50, because that's what Bissett just demanded. For all intents and purposes, again, he didn't tell him to do that. He said that the models are showing that we're 150 basis points, like 1.5% above neutral, which I think is aggressive. I think we're maybe 1% above neutral. But regardless, whatever models you're using, we are above, and we could ease. But then I think that it's time, and so the markets are starting to tell you that. And the stock market will suffer if Powell comes out this week and he's tremendously hawkish, if he's terribly hawkish, and he does not keep the door open for a rate cut, you're going to see a drawdown in the market. That's my opinion. I believe it's pretty obvious though. But I think Bitcoin and some of the tech stocks are getting nervous here. You had not great earnings this morning. From some of the tech leaders, and so the Qs are off, and the S&P is kind of dragging a little bit, and Bitcoin is leading the way. It continues to be the tip of the risk spear. I don't believe it should be, but it is. We just have to recognize that. People have to get their heads around that, especially the maxis, who I agree with them that it shouldn't be, but it is right now because it's considered that way. And it's going to continue to trade that way until further notice. Well, I mean, we've seen whales selling. We saw a big whale sell 80,000 Bitcoin just a couple of weeks ago. Price barely moved. That's good news. Now the question is, are they selling to go fund a lifestyle that they've held out for? Which, hey, God bless. If you have held on to 1,000 Bitcoin for this long and you want to go monetize that 80,000 Bitcoin for this long, and you want to go monetize that, it's billions of dollars, Yeah. Okay. How can you fault that? Go buy your chateau or your yacht or whatever that you're looking for and fund that lifestyle that you want, that you've held out for. Great. Whatever. No big deal. But I think that some of these whales that are selling are turning around and saying, they're like, look, I've had 100, 200 or whatever X on my money already. I want to get to, like, right now, yeah, we may get a 10X in Bitcoin. I believe we get a 10X in Bitcoin over the next 7-8 years. That's nothing like I've experienced up to now. The OGs, the whales that have been around for a long time. And so I think some of them want to remain in Bitcoin, but they want to get a little bit more out of it in this space. And there's a way to do that. The way to do that is to buy these Bitcoin treasury companies, because they'll give you what will be a multiple on that return, I believe. Now, not all of them, some of them, a handful of them will do very well, I think. That's my thesis. It's the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, that my hedge fund, that's what we believe. And we're invested in some of these because we believe that. Not all of them. We're not invested in every single treasury company, but we're invested in a select number of them that we believe in. I think that there's some rotation going there, Brandon, that's coming out of Bitcoin, going into these treasury companies, and is being washed back into Bitcoin as it happens. That's why you're seeing the price kind of grind sideways, higher, a little bit lower, sideways. It's kind of grinding here from 100 to 120. It's been in this range since May, basically. It dipped down a little bit in June, but since May, it's been in that range. It was in the 100 to 110 level, and then it moved up in July from 110 to 120. It's been between there and 110, 111, somewhere in there since the beginning of July. And I think what you're seeing is this rotation out, some OGs that are moving out of Bitcoin and into the treasury companies. And some of them are joining boards and doing that stuff and creating these treasury companies themselves. I mean, Adam Back is doing one.
Right now, Bitcoin's price swings can look dramatic, but many of them happen on relatively low trading volume. When a large buy order comes in, it often moves the price significantly because there isn't enough liquidity to absorb it smoothly. At the moment, the market appears to have more buyers waiting on the sidelines than sellers rushing to exit, which adds to the sense of uncertainty. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, meanwhile, is working hard to show that inflation, which spiked in recent years, is under control. Many analysts expect him to shift focus toward employment and possibly signal a small rate cut soon. That would be bullish for both Bitcoin and stocks, since lower interest rates reduce borrowing costs and encourage investment. Still, upcoming economic reports could swing sentiment, keeping markets cautious. On the Bitcoin side, some large holders, the so-called whales, have sold significant amounts recently without triggering sharp price drop. This suggests funds may be flowing into Bitcoin treasury companies, public firms that raise capital to expand their Bitcoin holdings. With prices holding steady between $110,000 and $120,000 in recent months, some whales are even joining these firms to help manage them, signaling a shift in strategy. Investors are no longer just holding Bitcoin, they're finding new ways to build businesses and capture upside from the broader Bitcoin ecosystem.
So first of all, the MNAV that you're talking about, the multiple on the underlying Bitcoin on their balance sheet, that's MNAV, the multiple on the NAV of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We've seen these things fluctuate around. We started buying MicroStrategy when the MNAV was 1.2. But we talked to them. We talked to Michael and we talked to Sharish, their treasurer, who helped implement this strategy, was spearheading it for them. We understood what they were trying to do and what their goal was and what their goal is. We still believe that. He's created all kinds of strategies around it. So MicroStrategy is a kind of a special situation because they're so far ahead of everybody else. They've got over 600,000 Bitcoin now. And so, and they've got access to capital markets that other companies just don't have. Not all of them, some of them do. CEP 21 certainly does with the involvement of Cantor and Jack Mallers' new play there. But there's all kinds of different ways that these companies can create the ability to buy more Bitcoin. And it's using converts, which can actively dampen the volatility. Well, it actually dampens, it holds the price of the stock down, because as you issue a convert, there are convert arbitrage traders that will buy the convert and then short the stock in order to delta hedge it, and like what's called the optimal hedge around owning that convertible bond, because it can be converted into stock at a certain price, so they'll trade around that. Or you could do preferred shares like MicroStrategy is doing, and that is not dilutive to the stock. It doesn't put pressure on the stock because you're basically saying that we're going to pay you a dividend off of the future, basically the future price of Bitcoin. And so that's a special case. But there are other cases, like Metaplanet came out and was basically the only proxy for Bitcoin in all of Japan. So if you were a retirement account or an investor that wanted to buy Bitcoin but couldn't get it into your brokerage, you could buy Metaplanet and get a proxy to that. And now they're doing a similar playbook to MicroStrategy, and so they're able to create a way to arbitrage the capital markets. You're borrowing money in yen and you're buying Bitcoin with it. It's an arbitrage, and so they will warrant a different multiple. They have a different kind of moat there, because there's not another proxy for buying Bitcoin there like that. So that's a strong moat. It could change We don't know if and when, but that's more of a regulatory issue. Then you've got the same thing in other areas, whether it's Brazil or Canada or the UK. You've got similar situations, and so there are companies that were invested in those areas because of that. Then you get the question of what you're saying is what MNAV makes sense. And it is different for each one. And it really depends on a lot of the factors that you named. Do they have a moat? Is it a geographical, regulatory moat? Is it that they have great access to capital to expand their balance sheet? Do they have an original investor in and partner in their venture, like CEP does with Tether, 21 does with Tether? Is there something like that going on? Who is the CEO? Can they generate enough interest, and can they lead that strategy to that Bitcoin treasury strategy to do that? That's another question mark. And we believe that these things are going to settle in somewhere around 1 to 2.5 MNAV for virtually all of them. There may be outliers like Metaplanet that will be higher. But what we're seeing here, in my opinion, Brandon, is people figuring that out and trying to shake out who should be trading at what MNAV according to what they believe how much Bitcoin yield they can generate, meaning how much of an MNAV should they trade at because of how much more Bitcoin they can create in their balance sheet per shareholder. There's going to be a maturity process here in all of these companies. And in the companies who do add Bitcoin to their balance sheet. So you hit on something that's important. Let's kind of unpack this. Strategy is they basically said they're executing a financial engineering strategy to get more Bitcoin on the balance sheet for their shareholders. That's all they've said so far. I do believe that they're going to get big enough that they can do other things with that Bitcoin. They have not laid out a plan for that yet. Michael's a smart guy. He's going to figure out ways that they can capitalize that and keep growing this company. He wants, to eventually be the biggest company in the world. Why not? And he eventually will be if he sticks with the strategy and Bitcoin does what we think it's going to do. 21 explicitly came out and said they're going to be a Bitcoin finance company. They're going to structure products around it, lending products, collateralized products, so that is different. That is what they're headed to do. That's their goal. It's a different strategy. Metaplan is much more along the lines of a Japanese version of strategy, of MicroStrategy, doing the same kind of financial engineering. And then you've got other companies that are looking to use cash flows to fund this Bitcoin treasury. This is really important, and this is something that we have not seen be rewarded yet, which is real companies with real cash flows using those cash flows to buy Bitcoin and add to their treasury. That has not been rewarded yet. The current reward is financially engineer Wall Street out of dollars to use those dollars to put into Bitcoin. And so arbitrage that capital market. That's been the big play so far. I do believe that eventually we get to this point, Brandon, where people realize that the best play long term, once this has been kind of soaked up, the capital markets play, the arbitrage play, it's going to be using cash flows to buy Bitcoin and put it on your treasury. Ultimately, the ultimate goal, I think, sign of maturity of this space is when you have companies that are S&P 500 companies that are not just the Apples and Microsofts and Googles of the world, but eventually they are doing this, where they are cash cows. You're creating billions of dollars, and they're turning around and buying billions of dollars of Bitcoin with that.
James Lavish explained that the MNAV, or multiple on the net asset value of Bitcoin held on a company's balance sheet, tends to fluctuate but usually settles between 1x and 2.5x. He revealed that they began buying MicroStrategy shares when the MNAV was around 1.2, after speaking directly with company leadership about their Bitcoin strategy. MicroStrategy stands out as the largest Bitcoin treasury company, holding over 600,000 BTC and enjoying stronger access to capital markets than most competitors. He broke down how these companies use financial tools to keep accumulating Bitcoin. Convertible notes allow them to raise funds, though they can temporarily suppress stock prices as traders hedge by shorting the stock. Preferred shares, meanwhile, pay dividends tied to Bitcoin's future price and avoid diluting existing shareholders. Lavish also pointed to Metaplanet, Japan's main Bitcoin proxy, which fills a gap for local investors who struggle to access Bitcoin directly. By borrowing in yen to buy Bitcoin, Metaplanet even creates an arbitrage opportunity. Other countries, including Brazil, Canada, and the UK, have similar firms leveraging regional advantages in regulation and capital access. Ultimately, a company's MNAV depends on its competitive moat, leadership strength, and ability to raise capital. While MicroStrategy is focused on being the dominant Bitcoin treasury company, others like 21.co are expanding into Bitcoin finance products such as lending. Lavish suggested we may soon see a new phase where firms with strong cash flows start buying Bitcoin directly, moving beyond financial engineering. So, here's the big question. When whales sell some of their Bitcoin, does it signal a deeper market shift? Or is it simply smart, long-term profit-taking? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these two awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.